a sad homecoming. Van Nguyen's family brings his body back to Australia. The Treasurer's bold plan to strip bad parents of their child support payments, but welfare groups aren't convinced.
If the Treasurer's really interested in it, then support the states more, give them the money they need to make this system work.
And fire in the sky, the spectacular show over Australia's west.
What the hell is that?
Oh my God! Hello, I'm Natarsha Belling and welcome to 10's Late News. Also tonight, the shock stabbing of a popular radio newsreader. How Melbourne's emergency services fared when they were put to the terror test ahead of the Commonwealth Games. The tearful reunion for an Australian mother and her daughter separated for 60 years. And the final farewell for George Best. Thousands paid tribute to a soccer legend.
We won't forget our Belfast boy. You filled our lives with so much joy. Your star will shine now in the sky. Farewell, our friend.
But first tonight, a sad homecoming for the mother of Van Nguyen. She's brought her son's body home after his execution in Singapore, preparing for his funeral in Melbourne on Wednesday. The convicted drug smuggler's lawyer is vowing to continue his campaign against the death penalty. But Prime Minister Howard has warned Australia can't change the attitude of major powers to capital punishment.
A grieving mother leaving the country that killed her son, Kim Nguyen returning to Australia with the body of the executed drug smuggler. She was escorted through the terminal by friends and staff from the Australian High Commission, local police also lending a hand. One of Van Nguyen's Australian lawyers making the sad trip home with the mother of the man he fought so desperately to save before last Friday's hanging.
Thursday and Friday were two of the worst days of my life, both professionally and personally.
Van's twin Kwa walked stoically through the crush. It had been claimed the dead man ran the drugs to help pay off his brother's debts. That card was played during repeated calls for clemency at the highest levels. Lex Lazary QC says he will now rally the Australian government to have the death penalty stamped out in the region.
Formalise a strong policy so that Australia can take a lead in this region in particular against the death penalty.
If anybody imagines that a diplomatic offensive by Australia is going to change the attitude of China or the attitude of Singapore, then I think they're mistaken.
Good Shepherd sisters who cared for Kim in her hour of need have also lashed out, saying the death penalty is cruel, inhumane and violates the right to life. Back in Melbourne, special provisions were made for the family to leave the airport through a special door. The priest who will conduct Van's funeral there to greet them.
He asked that it be a bilingual funeral in both English and Vietnamese, and he asked that he be committed to God with the full rights of the church.
After being unloaded from the plane, Van's body will be kept at a local funeral parlour until his long journey home ends on Wednesday with a service at Melbourne's St Patrick's Catholic Cathedral. In Singapore, Alan Rascal, 10 News.
Bad parents could be stripped of their child welfare payments under a radical plan by the Treasurer. But the opposition claims Peter Costello is just trying to divert attention from the scandal over a controversial appointment to the Reserve Bank Board.
Peter Costello originally flagged the idea of redirecting welfare payments from dysfunctional parents when he visited Cape York in July. He was struck by the neglect of some children and heard impassioned pleas from Aboriginal elders to give the money to responsible family members, often grandparents caring for the children. But in the 5 months since, there's been little action.
I just think it's passing strange we hear about this morning because this Treasurer has been in office for 10 years. And if he's got a deeply held view about this, why haven't we heard it before?
Mr Costello's office says they've been formulating the plan to be raised in Parliament this week and then submitted to Cabinet for discussion. The Salvation Army predicts problems for non-Indigenous areas where a sense of community often doesn't exist and state-based programs do.
If the Treasurer's really interested in it, then support the states more, give them the money they need to make this system work in this community, but then support the Indigenous community with what they want.
Labor says the whole plan is a diversion.
I don't think there's any doubt that it's a diversion from his problems over Mr Gerard.
Mr Costello wouldn't appear on camera to discuss the proposal, no doubt lying low over the Gerard tax avoidance affair. The opposition is promising to pursue the Treasurer in Parliament this week. The Prime Minister making it clear whose idea the appointment was.
Peter came to me and said, what about Robert Gerard?
But he insists he backed the decision.
Yeah, but hang on, nothing turns on that. Now, please don't, try and impute something in that. I know Robert Gerard well. I thought it was a very good idea.
Leonie Mellor, 10 News.
A Victorian schoolie has died in the treacherous surf on the Gold Coast. The 18-year-old from Clifton Springs near Geelong was swimming at an unpatrolled section of the beach with two friends late yesterday when they got into trouble. One of the group tried to keep the teenager afloat but lost him moments before a lifesaver reached them. Rescue crews searched the murky waters for several hours before resuming this morning. The teenager's friends also returned to the beach along with members of their family who had flown in from Victoria. With just 100 days until the start of the Commonwealth Games, organisers are making sure Melbourne's anti-terror response is up to scratch. A dramatic exercise on the city's underground rail network, testing emergency services.
Training for a horror emergency service personnel hope they'll never have to confront. A mock bomb blast in Melbourne's underground rail system. 80 volunteers playing the dead and injured, providing vital terror response training. The exercise testing the capabilities of our frontline rescue teams before the massive influx of visitors next March.
It's very, very tight down on the platform. It was dark, and we just wanted to expose people to that sort of environment.
Despite being left in the dark on the details, emergency workers appear to have passed the test with flying colours.
In the response, in the management of the incident, and the treatment and the transportation and reception of injured people was quite successful.
Whatever the circumstances, we know we've got the capability and we've got the trained staff to deal with whatever occurs.
Also taking shape, the Athletes' Village. Mayor Steve Monaghetti conducting a tour of facilities. But not everyone's happy. The former marathon runner brushing aside criticism from some athletes. The accommodation is too cramped and not conducive to gold medal performances.
These games are not just about winning medals, it's about taking home an experience of Melbourne, Victoria and being a part of what will be a very successful multi-sport event.
Gerard Ch.10, 10 News.
A meteor has blazed a spectacular trail across Western Australia and sparked widespread panic. The fireball could be seen for hundreds of kilometres.
Jesus, what the hell is that? Oh my God! It looked like a scene from War of the Worlds, but this was no science fiction.
That went behind a cloud.
You were expecting it to hit the ground and for it to be almost some kind of cataclysmic thing.
Like hundreds of WA families, the Cowpers were enjoying a pre-Christmas party when the sky exploded just before 9 p.m.
I've never seen anything like that.
No, it was massive.
But southeast of Perth, there was true shock and awe. Wheatbelt farmers nearly knocked off their feet by the force of the blast as the fireball finally exploded.
And the ute started to shake, and I thought the world had come to an end.
Like Warren, I thought it'd all come to an end. I shook for about 10 minutes after that, so I actually called Warren up to see if we're still going.
The shockwave blew open the lid on this grain silo at Dumbleyoung, and the farm dog still hasn't recovered.
Ear-piercing it was, yeah. And it come through the trees behind us and just cracked.
We stopped and checked everything. Everything was all right, so started driving and I said to him, I can hardly see, like a welding flash in my eyes.
The fireball's path is eerily similar to that of Skylab, which crashed to Earth just east of here 26 years ago. But the size of last night's explosion means it probably wasn't space junk.
A big solid piece of rock, maybe the size of a basketball. It wouldn't have been any bigger than that.
Scientists believe as the meteor plummeted through the atmosphere over WA, it superheated, finally exploding in mid-air.
From the time delay between seeing it and hearing it, I'd estimate it was probably 100 kilometres up in the atmosphere by the time it actually exploded.
It brought the hairs up on the back of my neck when it first happened because I thought old Nick had come to finish us off.
Nick Way, 10 News.
The popular radio newsreader fighting for life after a Christmas party stabbing. That story when 10's Late News returns. Also, the video that reveals terrorists celebrating the mass murder of US Marines in Iraq.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
And how a generous immigration officer finally reunited an Australian mother and the daughter she lost in World War II.